mynews.studio.
A schoolyard that once echoed with the sounds of children playing is now silent. So, are we really ending child labor? Or are the problems just moving out of sight?
Today's date is December 20th, 2025. A new report says there are 20 million fewer children in child labor compared to 2020. That's a significant change, but what's actually behind this decrease?
It's a combination of changes in policy and direct support to families. For instance, countries like Malawi, Japan, and Vietnam have eliminated school fees. That's made it possible for more children to go to school instead of working in fields or factories. There's a clear connection. When you remove the financial barrier, families are more likely to keep their kids in class.
So would you say education is the main reason for this change?
It's a major factor, but not the only one. Let's look at Thailand, Czechia, and Switzerland. They're among 70 countries that have banned all forms of corporal punishment. That's significant because keeping children safe from violence, whether at home or at school, helps ensure they're in supportive environments.
I also saw that Brazil passed a new online child rights law. Why is focusing on digital spaces such a big step?
Brazil's new law is important because it's the first of its kind in Latin America. Since children are spending more of their time online, the law targets issues like cyberbullying, exploitation, and privacy. It's about updating protections to fit where children actually are today.
And the Safe Schools Declaration, recently, the US and Kosovo joined, making it 122 countries now. What does signing that declaration actually do?
It's not just a symbolic gesture. The declaration sets clear standards for protecting schools during conflicts, including not using them for military purposes. Countries that sign are monitored for their progress, so it's both a commitment and a way to keep track of real-world changes.
There's mention of expanded child benefits in China, Fiji, Japan, and the UK. Are these direct payments? How do they make a difference?
Mostly yes, they're direct cash or tax benefits for families with children. The idea is that with more stable income at home, there's less pressure for kids to work. Estimates suggest that, in these countries, hundreds of thousands of children could escape poverty by 2030 thanks to these programs.
But it's not all progress. Sub-Saharan Africa is still struggling. What's holding things back there?
Several things. Nearly 2/3 of all children in child labor are in that region. Deep poverty, ongoing conflict, and weak education systems make it difficult to see real change. In places like South Sudan, Ethiopia, and Burkina Faso, progress is extremely slow.
So is it mainly a matter of resources, or is enforcement the bigger issue?
It's both. Organizations like UNICEF and the ILO do provide support and run awareness campaigns, but many governments simply don't have the resources to enforce child labor laws. In rural or informal sectors, violations often go unnoticed. And in some communities, there's still a belief that traditional work isn't harmful, so the stigma is low.
So even when laws exist, they might not actually reach the kids who need them.
Exactly. Passing a law is just the first step. The real challenge is implementation and monitoring, especially in remote areas. That's why international forums like the UN Human Rights Council are important. They push for follow-through and track progress.
Let's talk about trade for a moment. How does international trade and supply chains fit into this picture?
Trade agreements more often require companies to check their supply chains for child labor. The EU, for instance, ties foreign aid and access to its markets to anti-child labor measures. This puts pressure on industries like agriculture, where child labor is common, to change their practices.
So if a company wants to export to the EU, it actually has to prove its products weren't made with child labor?
That's the intention. And with Sustainable Development Goal Target 8.7, there's now a global mandate to end child labor. Corporate due diligence is a key part of making that happen.
Taking a step back, should we see this as a turning point? Or is there a risk the progress could be lost?
We're seeing real progress, but it's fragile. Economic crises, conflict, or climate disasters could quickly undo these gains. The key takeaway is that coordinated action works, but it needs to continue and adapt to each situation.
So, we know what's possible, but there's still unfinished work. Do you think the momentum will last, or could it stall?
That's an open question for policymakers, advocates, and everyone listening. Progress depends on continued commitment and resources. In the end, it's not just about passing laws, it's about making a change in children's daily lives.
To recap, fewer children in labor, bans on corporal punishment, digital rights for kids in Brazil, more family benefits, and the tough road ahead in sub-Saharan Africa. The trend is positive, but it's a reminder not to become complacent.
Thanks for tuning in. This episode was produced with support from mynews.studio. Try it now, free of charge.